Hello, I'm Steve Brown, and I'd like to invite you to a kipple. What's a kipple? Well, there's an old joke where someone asks, "Do you like Kipling?" And they get the reply, "I don't know, I've never kippled." This is about Rudyard Kipling and his poetry, my appreciation of him, and how I would like to dedicate this to my children, because I'm going to be reading you some poems which I think are very important for the moral education of children. Now, I have long been puzzled that few people in college English departments seem to be aware of what seems perfectly obvious to me, that Rudyard Kipling is the major poet of the modern English language. One college textbook I saw once said that he was once considered among the first rank of poets, but is now considered second rank. However, I have also heard that Jorge Luis Borges has said that Kipling is the greatest English poet because he is the only one who wrote about real things. Kipling arouses strong passions in people because he looked at life as it is, not as we wish it were, and he wrote about it with brilliant insight and ruthless honesty. For this, he is passionately loved and passionately hated. Nobody is indifferent to him. And if the quality of a man is made known by his enemies, then Kipling is certainly worth a look. Science fiction writer and Kipling fan Poul Anderson commented that, like Homer, Kipling may outlive his own civilization. 1,000 years from now, scholars are going to have their hands full understanding the language he used, full of Hindi loanwords, soldier's argot, and the dialect of common folk set in an idiosyncratic phonetic spelling. Although my children's mother, who is from Poland, loves him and often brings works she's found on her own to my attention as well. Academics, evidently, some of them, think that writing in the common tongue is kind of low class. Say, but didn't a fellow named Dante do that once? Shock everybody? Now, people who hate Kipling don't just disagree with him and his quaint old-fashioned notions of virtue, honesty, character, and loyalty, nor do they fail to understand what he's saying. They go out of their way to misrepresent and vilify what he said and stood for. I'm going to deal with a few of the common charges against Kipling right now. 1. Kipling was a racist. In a word, poppycock. I'd have said bullshit, but Kipling wouldn't. Read his short stories Without Benefit of Clergy or The Story of Mohammed Dean, or poems such as My Mother Lodged Back Home, and say that. Those who cry racist sometimes cite the Song of the White Men. Now this is the oath that the white men take when they build their homes afar. Freedom for ourselves and freedom for our sons, and failing freedom, war. We have kept our faith, bear witness to our faith, dear souls of freemen slain, but well to the world when the white men join to prove their faith again. This does sound a little over the top, but I will make two observations. One, to speak well of your own people is not the same thing as speaking ill of someone else's. And it's pretty plain from the body of his work that Kipling was talking about Western civilization and not a race per se. Now, try reciting that poem to a group of the politically correct, substituting oppressed ethnic group of your choice, and attribute it to somebody like, James Baldwin or Leroy Jones. It's a hoot, but if you can't resist letting them in on the joke eventually, you better be standing near the door. Others cite the line, "Those that hold not thee in awe, lesser breeds without the law." And this is great because it's prima facie evidence that they haven't read Kipling, or they'd know he was talking about the Germans in the period in between the two world wars. Now sample this if you still think Kipling was a racial chauvinist. This is the Song of the Eskimos. The people of the eastern ice, they are melting like the snow. They beg for coffee and sugar. They go where the white men go. The people of the western ice, they learn to steal and fight. They sell their furs to the trading post. They sell their souls to the white. The people of the southern ice, they trade with the whalers' crew. Their women have many ribbons, but their tents are torn and few. But the people of the elder ice beyond the white man's ken, their spears are tipped with the narwhal horn, and they are the last of the men. If you know anything about Eskimos, you know that their name for themselves is Inuit, which means the men. Now, has anyone else ever written as eloquently about the passing of traditional cultures? Another charge. Kipling was an imperialist. Well, yes, he was. And we all know that imperialism is always and forever a bad thing. I have heard people in academia argue that the British had no right to interfere with indigenous Indian customs such as thogi, the worshippers of the Hindu goddess Kali, whose devotion consisted of strangling and robbing travelers on the roads, 40,000 in a good year; suti, the custom of burning widows on their husband's funeral pyre; and slavery, not at all the same as that detestable practice of the American South, more like an extended family, really, honest. Kipling pretty obviously thought the British Empire was on balance a force for good, but he also recognized there was a lot of stupidity in it, and it was not going to last forever, perhaps not even his own lifetime. Now the British Empire is no more, and you could ask, is the world a safer place specifically because of this? Another charge. Kipling was a Victorian moralistic prig, freely paraphrased. Again, read Without Benefit of Clergy about the love of an Englishman for his 16-year-old Indian concubine and their child, or The Gardener about a woman who passes off her illegitimate child as the byblow of her late brother. Be warned, though, you must be prepared to have the heart torn right out of your chest. Both stories are told with a depth of compassion one doesn't see much of these days, when everybody seems full to the brim with a smug, self-satisfied counterfeit of it. But both make it plain that violating the taboos of your tribe has its consequences. Another, Kipling was an elitist. Well, if you mean Kipling had the deepest respect for competence in any field, okay. If you mean disdain for the lower orders, you can't have read the same Kipling. Unlike those who wear their phony and fatuous love for the common man on their sleeve, Kipling actually spent quite a lot of time with army rankers, civil service clerks, and working men. He loved and respected them as they were, warts and all. Now this is a bit from openly commercial doggerel written to raise money for soldiers' family relief in the Boer War. He's an absent-minded beggar, and his weaknesses are great, but we and Paul must take him as we find him. He is out on active service wiping something off a slate, and he's left a lot of little things behind him. There are girls he walked with casual, they'll be sorry now he's gone, for an absent-minded beggar they will find him. But it ain't the time for sermons now with winter coming on. We must help the girl that Tommy's left behind him. So much for Victorian moralizing. Kipling looked down on non-Western cultures and religions. Really? From certain maxims of Hafiz. My brother prays, so saith Kabir, to stone and brass and heathen wise. But in my brother's voice I hear mine own unanswered agonies. His God is as his fates assign. His prayer is all the world's and mine. Or check out Buddha at Kamakura, or the novel Kim, for that matter. Now, even Kipling wrote doggerel sometimes, see Great Heart about Teddy Roosevelt. And often in an otherwise great poem you'll find awkwardly forced rhymes, such as The Old Issue or The Sons of Martha. My son's godmother, who remembers Kipling coming to visit her father, attributed this to his wife, who she would only describe as that dreadful American woman, making him write to pay the bills when the muse simply wasn't with him. But Kipling's doggerel is better than most of anyone else's best, and when Kipling was in top form, he transcends poetry into what one girl I introduced him to described as inspired prophecy, such as The Gods of the Copybook Headings, which I will presently read to you. Now, do you begin to see why he's hated, vilified, and lied about? He said things that make people profoundly uncomfortable. He said that actions have consequences, that every good thing must be paid for, and that pain is part of our lot in life, and there's nothing you can do about it but meet it as bravely as you can. I was introduced to Kipling by my father when I was a boy, Gunga Din, I think it was, and to this day I'm not sure there's anything he did better to prepare me for life's rough spots. I can recite pages of Kipling from memory and can recall some very bad times when I took comfort and strength from taking long walks reciting it to myself. If I were to recommend literature for the moral education of children, I'd start at an early age with the Jungle Books, and I'd be sure they were familiar with If and Hymn to Breaking Strain. Kipling knew whereof he was writing about. His beloved youngest daughter died aged 4. He and his wife watched as their 17-year-old only son went off to France and certain death in World War I. After preaching the necessity of sending their nation's youth to the horror of that war, they couldn't find the hypocrisy in themselves to urge him to avoid military service or pulled strings to keep him from harm's way. In fact, they pulled strings to get him into service because he was blind as a bat without his glasses, like Kipling himself. They never even had the comfort of recovering his body. Kipling's line ended with him. None of his surviving children had children of his own. What he left behind for us is the knowledge that you can take it. Life's blows can beat you, break you, and will eventually kill you, but they can't beat you unless you give in. Now, there are worse ways to spend an evening with friends than having a kipple. Turn off the TV, grab a beer, pass around the complete verse, and have everyone read their favorites. Now, I am going to read some of my favorites, as I said, that I think are important for the moral education of children. And, as I said, I would dedicate this to my children, Jerzy and Judita. If Daddy's not around, I want you to know these poems, and this is for you. The first one, of course, would be If, and best known. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. All right, now not so well known is the gods of the copybook headings. Copybooks were books that were once given to school children to practice their penmanship and perhaps their research. There would be a heading at the top of the page, and accounts differ. I think some that there would be an aphorism, a little bit of wisdom that the child would copy again and again. Remember, this is when they taught that exquisite penmanship. Or that there would be a subject theme at the top and kids would find something in the library to write about it. Now, if you listen closely, you can hear the capitalization on some of the subjects. So this is the gods of the copybook headings. As I pass through my incarnations in every age and race, I make my proper prostrations to the gods of the marketplace. Peering through reverent fingers, I watch them flourish and fall, and the gods of the copybook headings, I notice, outlast them all. We were living in trees when they met us. They showed us each in turn that water would certainly wet us, as fire would certainly burn. But we found them lacking in uplift, vision, and breadth of mind. So we left them to teach the gorillas while we followed the march of mankind. We moved as the spirit listed, they never altered their pace, being neither cloud nor wind-born like the gods of the marketplace. But they always caught up with our progress, and presently word would come that a tribe had been wiped off its ice field, or the lights had gone out in Rome. With the hopes that our world is built on, they were utterly out of touch. They denied that the moon was Stilton. They denied she was even Dutch. They denied that wishes were horses. They denied that a pig had wings. So we followed the gods of the marketplace who promised these wonderful things. When the Cambrian measures were forming, they promised perpetual peace. They swore if we gave up our weapons that the wars of the tribes would cease. But when we disarmed, they sold us and delivered us bound to our foe. And the gods of the copybook headings said, "Stick to the devil you know." On the first Feminian sandstones, we were promised the fuller life, which started by loving our neighbor and ended by loving his wife, till our women had no more children and the men lost reason and faith. And the gods of the copybook headings said, "The wages of sin is death." In the Carboniferous epoch, we were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay for collective Paul. But although we had plenty of money, there was nothing our money could buy. And the gods of the copybook headings said, "If you don't work, you die." Then the gods of the market tumbled, and their smooth-tongued wizards withdrew, and the hearts of the meanest were humbled, and began to believe it was true, that all is not gold that glitters, and two make four, and the gods of the copybook headings limped up to explain it once more. As it will be in the future, it was at the fall of man. There are only 4 things certain since social progress began: that the dog returns to its vomit, and the sow returns to her mire, and the burnt fool's bandaged finger goes wobbling back to the fire. And after this being accomplished, and the brave new world begins, when all men are paid for existing, and no man must pay for his sins. As surely as water will wet us, as surely as fire will burn, the gods of the copybook headings with terror and slaughter return. All righty. Now, this one also is lesser known than If. I think this is one of my personal favorites. And as I said, one of the ones that has given me great comfort in some very bad times. This is called The Hymn of Breaking Strain, and it shows a bit of Kipling's background in Freemasonry, and with its emphasis on the imagery of building and engineering and architecture. The careful textbooks measure, let all who build beware, the load, the shock, the pressure, material can bear. So when the buckled girder lets down the grinding span, the blame of loss or murder is laid upon the man, not on the stuff, the man. But in our daily dealing with stone and steel we find the gods have no such feeling of justice for mankind. To no set gauge they make us, for no laid course prepare, and presently o'ertake us with loads we cannot bear, too merciless to bear. The prudent textbooks give it, in tables at the end, the stress that shears a rivet, or makes a tie-bar bend. What traffic wrecks macadam, what concrete should endure. But we, poor sons of Adam, have no such literature to warn us or make sure. We hold all earth to plunder, all time and space as well, too wonder-stale to wonder at each new miracle, till in the mid-illusion of Godhead neath our hand falls multiple confusion on all we did or planned, the mighty works we planned. We only of creation, O luckier bridge and rail, abide the twin damnation to fail and know we fail. Yet we, by which sole token we know we once were gods, take shame in being broken, however great the odds, the burden or the odds. O veiled and secret power, whose paths we seek in vain, be with us in our hour of overthrow and pain, that we, by which sure token we know thy ways are true, in spite of being broken, because of being broken, may rise and build anew, stand up and build anew. I would like to read you another even lesser known one. These are the 4 poems, and one more, which I think are really important for my children to know. This is called natural theology, and it's divided into a number of headings. It's almost a separate series of poems, rather, of the same theme and meter and rhyme, rather than this. But each heading would be read, and it would show the theology of that particular time and place. Primitive. I ate my fill of a whale that died and stranded after a month at sea. There is a pain in my inside. Why have the gods afflicted me? Oh, I am purged till I am a wraith. Wow, I am sick till I cannot see. What is the sense of reason and faith? Look how the gods have afflicted me. Pagan. How can the skin of a rat or mouse hold anything more than a harmless flea? The burning plague has taken